Hello, and welcome to the Music Teacher Coffee Talk podcast. I'm Carrie.
And I'm Tanya. We are both elementary music teachers who love to talk shop, preferably over a steaming cup of coffee. This is episode 159. Today, we are talking about starting the school year. We'll also talk about our highs and lows from the summer, discuss some ideas in our Know Better, Do Better segment, share a work smarter, not harder teacher tip.
And in our CODA section, we'll give some specific recommendations of our favorite things we are enjoying in and out of the music room. So grab your beverage of choice and let's get started. Well, hey everybody, we are back from a nice long summer break from school
Uh-huh.
and from podcasting. We decided to take this summer off.
That was our first summer off. Yes.
Yeah, so it's nice to be back. Had to dig out the microphone and brush off the dust and all that, but here we are, and now we're going to talk about highs and lows from our summer. Maybe a little bit of
Wow.
both. I'm sure we have more than just one.
Yes.
Um, so first of all, we have some fun things going on in Music Teacher Coffee Talk world. You want to talk about our first thing here, Tanya?
Yeah. So over the summer, or right before the summer, we were asked to write an article for the Oak Envoy, and that's the Organization of American Kodály Educators publication that comes out online. And we did a conference reflection about the 50th anniversary Oak conference that happened in Chicago this past March 2024. And our conference reflection is called 2024 Oak Conference Reflection, how Oak is evolving and changing. And it's by us. If you are an Oak member, then you are able to read that article. If you are not an Oak member and you would like to become one, then you have access to the entire Envoy. Um, and it's totally worth it for many reasons. But yeah, so check out that article.
And if you become a member, then you have access to all Oak envoys from the past because everything is electronic on the website. So it's a really great resource for membership that we don't talk about enough for Oak. And then lately, within the past couple of editions of the Envoy, there's been one featured article that has been free to pique your interest. So if you want to just at least go, we'll link to the Envoy website in our show notes, which you can find at musicteachercoffeetalkpodcast.com. But we'll link to the Envoy from there, so you can at least kind of see maybe what the free article is about, and then from there decide. But it's a really great resource that I use often.
Yes. Yeah,
So.
it's wonderful.
All right, and then another fun thing that's coming up very soon, if you're listening to this podcast as it's coming out, we are having a workshop coming up on Saturday, August 17th for NCAKE, which is Northern California Association of Kodai Educators, and it's called Songs, Games, and Strategies to Start the School Year from 9 o'clock to 1 o'clock, and I can't remember the location off the top of my head, but it's like Oakland adjacent, I believe. Does that sound right to you?
Yes, and we'll have the link in our show notes.
Yeah.
So where if you are anywhere in Northern California, also there is an option that you can Zoom in or see the workshop online. So that is a thing as well. Go
Or
check it
watch
out
a recording too, I think
or
up to
watch a
30
recording.
days afterwards. So even if you are hearing this and the workshop's already passed, you might still be able to contact NCAKE to register and get the recording. So,
Yes,
yeah.
very excited about that.
So we'll link to their website so you can get all those details. And we're excited to go and sing and play in California.
Yes,
And Tanya, this isn't on our little list, but you were just in Texas presenting in San Antonio.
yes. I was in San Antonio this past week. Met I think around 60 awesome music educators. So hello, San Antonio people, if you're listening. It was a great fun day, and they are raring to go for their school year. I was so honored to be a part of that, and they are going to have an awesome school year. They are very energetic. They did all the things. We were doing a lot of active music making, and it was just a joy for me to be a part of the beginning of their school year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, just a friendly reminder that Tanya and I love going places and presenting together or separately, depending on what your budget allows. So, if you are interested in having both or either one of us come and present for your school district or your local Kodai or ORF chapter or at your university, wherever you would like to have us, we would love to come. So, again, if you go to musicteachercoffeetalkpodcast.com, you can find ways to connect with us through there. So, give us a message if you're interested.
Exactly.
So, what else
Um,
this summer, Tanya? What else was great?
Well, I was very honored to again teach level one at Colorado State University for the Colorado Kodai Institute. And so I had fabulous level one students. And I need to say hello to Emily, Tressa, Laura, Madeline, Anna, Brianna, excuse me, Brianna, Lori, Jean, Olivia, Noah, and Naomi Turriciano. Naomi, I got your name right finally. Okay. And so, yeah, it was just a joyful time at Colorado State University. I love teaching level one. I think it's the best because I get to do all of the beginning. Here is the Kodai inspired world things. And yeah, so that was a wonderful time for me. And I love being a part of the Colorado Kodai Institute. And Carrie, you had some academic adventures as well.
Yeah, I didn't teach, but I learned. I was a student. So I got to go take ORF level one at Metro State University here in Denver, which I found out so much when I was there that we're kind of one of the oldest areas for ORF training. One of the, I mean, there's a few pockets, right? But we're kind of one of the older areas, and that was kind of fun to hear. So really fantastic program, taking level one pedagogy with Karen Petty and movement with Laura Peterson and recorder with Paul Halstead. And it was so much fun to use my brain in a very different way and to learn. So I need to give a shout out to my fellow students, not my students, but fellow students: Mario, Emma, Julia, Sarah, Shelby, Jonathan, Kateri, Ian, Cheyenne, Amy, Daisy, Amy again, two Amy's, Jessica and Nat. And it was just so much fun to be with this group of educators with varying levels of experience, but we just all had so much fun together, as always happens in a levels program. That's one of the best things, right, of taking a levels course, are the people you meet and the friendships you make. And we have our little Facebook group now, and so hopefully we'll continue to keep in touch. But it's really fantastic. Of course, coming at a course like that with 20 plus levels of or years of experience plus lots of Kodai training and teaching and learning, my brain absorbed the information differently than I would have 20 years ago with nothing else under my belt. So this is definitely going to be more like how to incorporate things into what I already do. And I'll have lots more thoughts of that in our next podcast. But then throughout the school year, I'm sure you guys will be hearing me referencing, well, in ORF, I'm trying to work on this, that kind of thing. So I'm not going to go into details now, but it was fantastic. It was so much fun.
Awesome. And it's time for our main theme. Happy New Year, Carrie.
Happy New Year! Doo! We should have little horns. Doo doo doo.
Yes, because I really think of this time as more of a new year than January. Does not feel like that. Does not feel like New Year.
No,
August, middle of August, that feels like New Year to me. My life is divided up with school years, as I'm sure most of you listening, you have that same experience. So these are things that we are doing to get ready for starting the school year. And we're going to talk about several things that we have in mind as we start a new school year. And I'm gonna give a little quote, and then you'll take off from there, Carrie.
okay.
Uh, One of my favorite quotes, because I noticed that in myself, whenever I first walk into my room, if I haven't planned on exactly what I'm to do, I get a little scattered about all the little things and all the big things. But as Stephen Covey says, the main thing is to keep the main thing the main thing.
Yeah.
I really love that quote.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we decided to go about this episode through that lens. We've done lots of back to school episodes, and I'll link to them in the show notes. How about that? Some of them are more like, here's some songs and games to get you started, or here's some things to think about with your room, or rules and procedures, all of those things, right? But this more is like kind of our priority list because, like Tanya said, it's really easy to get bogged down and caught in the weeds of things that really aren't as impactful as other things could be. And then all of a sudden, kids are walking in the door, and you realize you spent way too much on this thing and not enough time on that, right? So, also, my school is very influenced by the work of Stephen Covey, who wrote The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, because we are official Leader in Me school. Leader in Me is like a framework, curriculum. It's also a book, which is how to implement the 7 habits with students preschool all the way through 12th grade. And there's tons of resources and curricula that our teachers use in the classroom, and we incorporate it into our quote unquote specials area. Anyways, all that to say, I will link to just what the 7 habits are. There's just a quick Wikipedia page in case you don't know about the 7 habits of highly effective people and what they are. But we're focusing on habit number 3 today, which is put first things first. And the analogy we use with students in our school is your big rocks versus your little rocks. So if you think of like a jar, a big glass jar, and you want to fill that jar with rocks and sand and pebbles, if you started with the sand and pebbles, then you wouldn't have room for the big rocks, right? So you have to put the big rocks in first, then your pebbles, and then your sand that fills in the cracks. So I think it's really helpful to think about the beginning of the year, identify what are your big rocks, your medium rocks, your pebbles, your little rocks, your sand, and work in that order, because if you do too much sand, all of a sudden you don't have time for your big rocks. So Tanya and I are going to identify, we have very similar philosophy when it comes back to going back to school and just teaching in general. We have very similar values in that way. So we're going to talk about our big rocks and medium rocks and pebbles. Yours might be slightly different, and that's okay, but this is kind of, especially if you are newer to the field of music education, maybe where you want to focus first. And it's not always the most sexy things, let's just put it that way, right?
No.
So, so let's talk about some of those really beautiful big rocks, Tanya.
You know what? And I have been guilty of this, Carrie, because like I stated before, my brain just goes all the places, and I'm like, well, here's some concrete things I can do. I can put these things on a bulletin board. I can put my sit spots down, and then yeah, I spend like way too long doing that because that's a concrete thing that I'm like, I know what this is. I know how this goes, and then the big rocks like year planning, like the goals that I want for the school year, the big goals that I want for the school year, those take more thought, those take more energy into like defining. And so I have been very guilty of like doing a lot of sand at the very beginning of the school year.
Yeah.
And I was kind of in a mood yesterday at the end of the day because we had the afternoon to be in our rooms, and I started cutting out sit spots, and like I couldn't find the circle that was the same size that I had last year in the die cuts. And then I was trying to do it by hand, and I was frustrated because they didn't look great, and I was going to spend more time, and I had to stop myself and go, you know what? Of all the things, this is a tiny thing. I
Yeah.
really need to think about my long range plans, especially because I have a different amount of times that I will see the students. I will see the students 40 times because now we have STEAM in our rotation, and I will see kids for 2 days in a row, and that's different from what I've had for years. Since before COVID, I've been seeing kids for an entire week at a time, and then I see a new group the next week. It's so everything is shifted, and I really got to get my head around my long range planning and what that looks like for every grade level. Because if I don't, I'm going to find myself like in the middle of September going, what's happening next? What are we doing next? Oh my goodness, I have kids walking in the room tomorrow, and I don't know where we're going curricular wise.
Mm-hmm.
So um, that's one of my big rocks is the long term planning piece.
Yeah.
Uh huh.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure. Same. Yeah, I always make sure I carve out a good chunk of time at the beginning of my year to make my yearly plans and figure out how my rotations, how many times will I see the kids, where am I doing my programs, plug that in, and then figure out the rest based on that. And then, even more overarching than that, we kind of mentioned it, is setting just like big goals and new challenges, you know. But my caution there is to not do too much because if you set too many large goals, you're not going to get to them all and then you're going to feel overwhelmed. So I really just have
Yeah.
one this year as far as like a big goal goes. And that really is just to implement the things I learned in my ORF class, right? So if you took a training over the summer, that really can just be your big goal is to implement. And within that goal, I said I was going to basically try one new thing with each grade level, whether that be like a new ensemble, ORF ensemble, or a body percussion piece, or something more with movement, or just something more with student choice and creativity, because that's always something I feel like I can do more with. That's kind of my big overarching goal. So then now that I'm creating my long term plans, how am I plugging those in to the concepts and the overarching framework that I use with my Kodai inspired sequence? How can I plug and play some of these amazing experiences from the summer into that?
Exactly. Yeah.
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 So then another big rock that we talk about a lot this time of year is building community within your classroom, with your students, also within your building, within your team. This is the time of year that people like me who are a little more on the introverted side, we go a little nuts at staff meetings every time we're told we have to turn and talk, or we have to table talk, or we have to do some little activity. A piece of me dies every time that happens, but then I'm like, no, it's fine, because then I talk to people and I do start to feel that energy coming back, which is good. So building community within your school is obviously really important, but then thinking about ways to build community within your classroom, whether it's through social emotional learning lessons that you incorporate throughout the year, but especially are heavy on at the beginning of the year, or just simple active music making activities where kids are learning each other's names and things about each other. Do you have any specific ways that you build community that you want to mention? I know there's a million things you do, but do you have
There is
just
a,
kind of a
yeah. Well, yeah.
small
So one thing that I try to make sure happens on at every lesson is that kids have some time to um, have some choice, have some voice, and have time to reflect with other kids, especially at the beginning of the year. I want to make sure. I mean, turn and talk is like, I guess, your basic move that people think of, but there's different ways to do that kind of collaborative. Here's a small group, why don't you talk about this specific thing? So I try to weave a lot of that in at the very beginning of the year, especially the very first lesson, um, because I think students they need that. They're coming off of summer where they haven't had these like strict timetables of classes, or this is what we do right now. And they need that opportunity to reconnect with their classmates, reconnect with you, reconnect with the whole school community. Something else I like to do is to sing and play the dulcimer um, for the students, like usually at the end of the class. I just think it's a good way to build community, but also share the idea of, hey, we are musicians in this room. And I understand that it's vulnerable to share your voice, to share your singing voice, to share your musical side. But we are all doing that here, and I'll go first. Like, so it's my way of like getting vulnerable in front of the students with a purpose. And the thing is, I've done this for kindergarten, first grade, a little bit of second grade. And then I was thinking over the past couple days, like, why did I stop? Do I stop doing that with older kids? I need to be okay doing that with older kids too. Um, because that is, as they get into fourth grade, fifth grade, even if they have been comfortable musically in sharing themselves musically, at the start of puberty, all of these feelings get a lot more amplified, and a lot of kids they're growing and changing, literally, right?
mm-hmm.
So I think it's just a good way to remind us this is what we do in here. We make music. I'll go first.
Yeah, being vulnerable for the students
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
model.
Yeah, within reason. That is
Sure. Yeah.
really a good thing.
Right.
Right.
So a final big rock we can kind of talk about that's related is, planning activities that build classroom community, but also creating routines and procedures for your positive classroom environment. Being proactive, which is another one of the 7 habits. Being proactive with yourself and your students to have all those routines and procedures planned out, as well as like an implementation plan. Something that I do and have done is kind of create a checklist of these are all the routines and procedures I want my kids to know within the first rotation that I see them. And when I say rotation, I see them for 3 days in a row and then they go away. So within those first 3 days, what am I going to make sure? Because you can't get to everything in day one without it feeling really stodgy and boring. So, what are the things that I want to do? What do I want to do on day one, day two, and then implement those into active music making experiences? So the students are still moving and grooving, and we're practicing those routines and procedures as we go. Do you do something kind of similar?
Oh yeah, for sure. So I try to some specific things on my checklist is of course we're going to have a conversation about basic rules, expectations, procedures, and why. The why I think is super important rather than just saying, we will do this, this, this here. I like, especially older kids, to just have a minute to go, what would happen if we all spoke whenever we felt like in this room full of 27 kids? What would happen? What would happen if, we didn't have this expectation? So yeah, so having that conversation. Also, I like to practice going to instruments. This includes barred instruments, but also getting small instruments. So I try to plan at least some kind of instrumental thing that we do within the first 2 lessons. Practicing lining up, coming into the room, what's the expectation once you walk in the door. One thing that I've been doing for years now that I'll continue doing is greeting students at the door as a class, but also individually. So, like, that is a constant that they can expect, that I want to make eye contact um, with you individually, and you give me a high five, a hug, a handshake, maybe just a wave. If they don't want to be physical, that's fine. But I want to make eye contact with every kid as they come in the room. And I also want to be aware that some students coming to me, they might be coming from a place where eye contact is a little bit scary or means something else,
Yeah, not
right?
culturally relevant or
Yes,
important.
exactly.
Yeah, culturally doesn't match what our
Right.
expectations are.
Yeah, and I haven't had a lot of that at my school, to be honest. But I'm always on, aware that that could be a thing, and not even just culturally, but just from the family that they're in.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it is a thing where we don't make eye contact with adults because that's considered. I have known families where it's considered disrespectful, and not even from like their culture, just from their family.
Right.
So just to keep those things in mind. Yeah, I was going through my list of things. What did I miss, Carrie? What else do you have things for?
Bathroom, how students are going to go to the
Yes.
bathroom. You just got to decide what works for you on that. Yeah, lining up, turning talking, like if you have want to establish who your turn and talk partner is, as well as maybe
Yes.
you have like an across town buddy that you can always go to, or that's a choice or whatever. Um, yeah, how to get materials out, that's a big one for me. Yeah, I mean, those are kind of the big ones. Actually, I'll share this in our show notes because I mean, we've both done, but I've done a presentation for new teachers in our district about this, and I created like a checklist for them, an example, and then it forced a copy so they can adjust it and make their own. So I would be happy to share that in our show notes so you can see
Oh,
an
do
example
that. People will love that.
a checklist and then it'll be editable so you can change things up. This is an example of an elementary music checklist, routines and procedures, and it's like you check off when you did it and the date that you did it so you know that you did it. It
Exactly.
really holds
Yeah.
yourself accountable.
Yeah.
So,
Can I read a little quote because
yeah.
I have a list of quotes and this one stuck
Oh,
out.
I love it.
Um, from David Ginsburg, which says, there is a difference between trying to control students and establishing control of your classroom. Rules are about compliance, procedures are about coherence. So,
Yeah,
And
and
that's
I know I've
beautiful.
said this in past podcasts that I really don't like to use the word rules with my students. I've changed that to either norms or expectations, and I kind of use those interchangeably. I think that sets a totally different tone. And sometimes the kids still call it the rules and they understand that that's basically what it is, but it creates a very different tone when you say these are our norms or these are our expectations.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. I
So
love norms.
let's
I think I'll use that this year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's move into more of our medium rocks, our pebbles. So these are still things that are important that, it's not that I'm not doing it, but I want to make sure that I've got those big rocks first before the pebbles. So now let's talk about room setup. And I know it's really hard because like you said, I feel like I can't do planning until my room is set. So I will sometimes do some basic room setting, but just not like zhuzhing it up enough that I like have a desk space and I can sit and plan. But to be honest, a lot of times those big rocks that we just talked about are things that I do in the summer before we come back. I know people have different feelings on those things anyways, but so setting up your room for success. And really, the goal here, and we'll talk about this more when we get into sand and little rocks later, but the goal here is to set up your room that is ready for active music making. That is my goal. So on day one, if my word wall is not up yet, I'm okay with that. In fact, there's lots of research that shows that it's better to have lots of blank classroom wall space and a very clear and uncluttered classroom, and then you fill it in as the year goes on versus having everything, ready to go. So for me, it's the things like making sure the sit spots are ready so my students can get their assigned seats or choose their seats, whatever you choose to do. My desk area is ready for me, whatever that looks like for you. I like having a desk to actually sit and plan at. Some teachers might not, but whatever workspace you need. And then having materials easily accessible that you know you're going to need within those first couple weeks of lessons, right? If the cupboards aren't beautifully organized, that's okay because you're not maybe dealing with that stuff yet. It's really like, what are the things I'm going to need these first couple weeks? And how can my room look warm and welcoming and inviting and clean and organized even if my cupboards are a hot mess, right? Or for
Yeah.
me,
Yeah.
the stage, because the stage is kind of mine too, and I have this loft area in the stage that is like looming over me. Nobody sees that but me, right? And I know that that needs a major overhaul. It's not going to happen before kids walk in the room because that's not as important.
Yeah, exactly. No, I think that is very important. Um, I agree with having less things on the wall from the very beginning of the school year. Also, I understand that in their classroom, in the hallways, I mean, it's wonderful. There's all these bright, brand new bulletin boards that are welcoming and have kids' names in the apples and like, all of those wonderful things. I would like my room to be a place where maybe visually the kids go, oh, that they can not be just having all the bright colors in their face. Um, Visually, I get overstimulated myself
Mm,
more so than other things. Like if there's so much visual stuff, visual, not I want to say clutter, but even organized things that are very organized and colorful, if there's a lot of that, that distracts me. So I'm an adult. So I'm thinking, what if there's students that they just can't focus because of all of the visual stuff going on?
yeah.
So yeah, I like to have my floor. I do have sit spots, which have been my nemesis in the last day, but those will happen. I like to make sure that I have done my seating charts before they come in because I think that that saves a lot of time. Also, it refamiliarizes me with the students that I already know, and I can just put those. I use a program. I know you use it too, Idokio, where you can like physically within the app. There's some seating charts where you can drag kids' pictures here, there, and everywhere. I like to have that done before they walk in. I take pictures usually the very first day. I try to make it very fast. I take pictures of all the kids so that I have those seating charts ready to go. But before I have the pictures, I have where they are sitting. I'm not a big fan of doing seating charts during class because it takes me away from what I should be doing. I feel so much better if I can do that before they walk in. And yes, I do mostly boy, girl, boy, girl. Mostly, it depends. I know most of the kids with kindergarten. This year, I am trying to have them pick their own dot and see how that goes for, we'll see how long. It might be a day, it might be less than a day.
Hmm.
But being that they don't know each other either, um, I'm can't wait to see how that goes. So, yeah, as far as setting up the room for success, I agree. I don't have to have all the, even though it kills me a little bit inside. I'm like, oh, I really wanted to have this thing already set and ready to go. That's not the most important thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then along those same lines, talking about getting prepared, is writing those first day plans. I consider that also a medium rock, a pebble thing. I want to have everything ready to go. I know what's happening first, second, third. Um, my hard work is in the planning before the kids walk in the room.
Mm.
Now, of course, at the beginning of the year, yes, I'm going to be using my voice more because everything is this is the first time we've heard it. So I anticipate that if we're learning a new song or new chant, the very first day that we learn that, it's going to be me. I'm singing for the students, not with the students. And so it's true. My voice is going to be tired after the first 3 days, 4 days of school because it's a lot of me. But most of my hard work is going to be in the planning the lessons and once the kids are in the room as much as I can, give over that ownership of the songs, the chants, the materials, the dances, whatever we're doing, and back away and have them have that agency of being the music makers in the room.
Hmm. Yeah, and one tip I've never done this myself, but I've heard for people who do struggle vocally, especially in the beginning of the year, you could record a video of yourself or even get a group of students to record a video acting out some of those procedures that you want to teach. Here's where the bathroom pass is, all that kind of stuff. So then you don't have to say it, however many classes you have, 16, 20, 25 times. Those parts of your lessons could be little video clips so that way your voice is being used for the active music making parts of your lesson and you're not talking so much. So I haven't done that because I haven't necessarily felt a need, but I understand for some people who struggle vocally, especially at the beginning of the year, that could be a really helpful tip
Oh,
to
that would
try.
be so much fun. I wish I could figure out how to get kids, that would be a real good leadership thing
Yeah,
for like the fifth graders is to me. It should happen at the end of the year for the
that's the
fourth
thing.
graders.
You had to
Yeah.
plan. Yeah, so maybe make a note in your calendar now for May to get some older kids, some fifth graders, departing fifth graders, that this is their gift to the music room is to help you make some videos. I've also related, but different, have always had it in a like to do to get my kids to record singing games and create those for sub plans. So then there's
Yeah, that's
videos of
great.
kids doing singing games that subs can easily just pull up as part of the plans. But I digress. So
No, that's a great idea. And if you
yeah.
have them and you're using them within your school, um, I don't think you have to worry about blurring kids' faces if it's within your school community, right?
Exactly. Yeah, should be fine. So, and then another pebble to consider medium rock then is, really establishing then what is your classroom management framework, meaning again, your norms and expectations. I have a process where I establish those kind of with the kids, very guided, less so at the older age and more so at the younger age. But we establish our norms and expectations kind of collaboratively, and then talk about our choice days system where students can earn choice days in the music room, and all of that gets rolled out. Because I basically do the same thing from year to year, I don't spend a lot of time on that because I kind of know what I'm doing. But if you are at a new school or if you want to try something new, this would be a time to establish what you want those classroom management frameworks to be, whether it's a reward system or really going all in with PBIS or restorative practices, whatever it is. But you want to be prepared with your students and make sure you communicate clearly with your students the if this happens, when this happens, then this will happen. Consequences, rewards, all that kind of stuff, right?
Yes, yes, exactly. And whenever possible, make it a little Oreo where you have, the positive things, the negative consequences, and here's more positive things. You want to make sure it's a um, we're starting and ending with the positive ideas, the positive consequences.
Totally,
Yeah.
totally. So now finally, we get to those little rocks in the sand, and this is the stuff that's really should be lowest on the priority list. But really, when we were making this list, it's like, have we found as teachers that we get bogged down with at this time of year? What have we seen other teachers getting bogged down with? And we've alluded to these a little bit. So, what's one of those little sand things?
Well, when I was a newer teacher, and even when I was a not so newer teacher, I get caught up with making the room cute. Oh my. You could spend all your time, and I have, making the room cute. Um, oh boy, it is just so hard, especially if you are looking at social media, if you're looking at Pinterest and you're seeing all of those adorable rooms with the cute themes. And Carrie and we have said this many times, and I'm going to say it again. My theme is music.
Okay, me
I am,
too.
I am not doing a theme based on Star Wars or based on, I don't know, fill in the blank, the last Airbender. That's not in, whatever. The newest thing. I just cannot go there, and there's lots of reasons. Number one, I'm not good visually. I This is why I married an art teacher. He's good, and I can and when we were in the same school, there was a lot of hey Craig, would you come and help me hang these letters so that they're not all like listing, because they do. If I do it, I'm impatient, I don't measure things, and then I do this whole thing and I step back and I look and I go, oh, all of these letters are just driving into the ground. um so I'm not good at it. So that's one thing that just makes it a no brainer that I shouldn't spend a lot of time. Also, like we were talking earlier, I think it's distracting. Also, I think the problem with going with a very specific theme. So I don't know, let's choose Disney. Let's say you want your theme to be Mickey Mouse and Friends. All right. Okay, there's some cuteness there. There's also some copyright things. The Disney people, they'll be on you. But anyway, whatever. Let's say you're going Disney. Let's think about our entire community in the school and our classrooms of kids. I'm just going to tell you straight up, I'm not a Disney person. I don't dislike Disney. I've been to Disney World a long time ago. I've been to Disneyland. Um, I will. I'm not like never Disney ever. I don't have a vendetta against Disney, but I'm not. That doesn't entice me. And I'm imagining that there are children that also are like, Disney's not my thing. If this classroom's all about Disney, I guess I'm the odd one out, right?
Right.
Or fill in the blank, whatever theme
Yeah.
it is.
And I
Yeah,
think it's especially challenging for us as specialists because we see everybody. So things that are enticing to primary students might not be for intermediate and vice versa, right?
exactly.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, you don't want to isolate students or make them feel unwelcome in your class just because you choose a very specific theme. And all that to say, I mean, we're not trying to yuck your yum. There's people out there who are they love it and that's great, but my big thing is, have you done your big rocks and your medium rocks first? And this is just the sand that you're throwing in last. If you're doing all of this before you're writing your lesson plans, things are out of balance in my and I that's a hill I'll die on.
Yeah, me too. Just because I have done it. And
Yeah,
you
totally.
have the so many days, X amount of days to get everything ready. And here's the thing, a lot of teachers around you in the building, they are making their room cute. And you don't know what else they're doing, but there seems to be a high priority on making the space ready for kids. And yes, it should be ready for kids, but I know me, and I know I will get bogged down with those sit spots, and
Mm-hmm.
that I will spend a couple of hours trying to find, like, the perfect way to make it happen. So
Or the
I know I
perfect
need to.
font for your word wall or the
Yeah,
perfect
yeah,
color scheme and all that kind of stuff. That's the kind of stuff that I refuse to spend too much time on because there are other things that are more important. And I know you ask this question a lot, and it's a good question. Who is it for? Is it for the kids or is it for you? And there is value if it is for you. I'm not saying there isn't because you're in that space more than anybody else. Sometimes you're
yeah,
in
for
that
sure.
space more than you're in your home. And so you want it to be a space that you feel good about going to work and you feel proud of. I get that. But if it's just to keep up with the neighbors, that's not a good reason, right?
Right. Yeah. Create a welcoming environment, but it does not have to be, exploding with color and visuals and all of that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So,
Another sandy area that I know I hear a lot of teachers talk about this time of year, and again, guilty of it, is, looking for those cute first day of school activities that might be like a one and done activity, but are not going to really tie into your overall curricular goals. We hear a lot of teachers who say that they scroll Pinterest or they scroll Instagram or TikTok, and they find this one great little activity. Okay, great. So that's going to be 5 minutes of your lesson. So now what, right? So we always suggest, and this is definitely coming from our Kodai inspired brain too, thinking of your overarching curricular goals, then think more small, small, small until you find your activities. But if you're thinking activity, 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 that's not gonna sustain you, and you're gonna get real burnout real fast.
yeah.
Now that's not to say that, oh, I need to change it up. I'm just looking for a new fun name game for kindergarten because I'm tired of the one I've always done. Great, fine, but I know what I'm doing in the rest of the lesson. I'm not starting with that. So if your first step, I say this to new teachers, well, all teachers, if your first step when you're sitting down to write your lesson plans is going to a social media site or an external source, I think that's not a good sign. And that's a sign that maybe you need a bigger training, be it ORF, Kodai, or subscribe to something like Music Play, something that's going to give you more of an overarching framework, if you don't already have one for yourself. That's going to be a better use of your time. Now I know it's too late right now for ORF and Kodai training, but put a pin in it for next summer.
And there are
That's gonna,
workshops coming up. I
yeah,
bet you
and go to
an
workshops for
area.
sure.
Yeah.
That's gonna sustain you longer than this one cute activity you saw on TikTok.
Right. And in the same realm of those fun activities for the very beginning of the school year, if you do come across something that you love, can you make it musical? And can you make it connected to what you already plan to do? Like, for example, in second grade, I'm going to be reviewing Somi Law because we did not do in first grade. We're going to be driving towards dough in second grade,
Mm-hmm.
melodically first. And so I'm going to start with a game. Ikalaka blue bottle fishes in the sea. If you want a partner, please choose me. And where they partner up. And oh, here's a thing to share with that partner is what did you have for breakfast this morning or whatever. So we go through a few rounds of that. Um, and so this is a way where kids get to share, connect, communicate with each other. But I'm going to take that song, So La So Me, and that is going to be on the road to us reviewing what that looks like on the staff, how we can play it, So it's not a name game, but it is a something beginning of the year that I love to do. That it serves many purposes. It's curricular as well. If
Yeah.
I'm doing a name game, can I do a name game in third grade that will help us review rhythms that we learned in second grade, for example? Right.
Yeah. Yeah, bang for your buck stuff for sure.
Yes. And something that we have mentioned already, but we'll keep mentioning is that, the social media, scrolling and following, definitely I consider, you consider this sand, things that, yeah, they're part of our world and there's some good things out there. But if you are like me, maybe you find yourself going down rabbit holes that are not really worth it, in lieu of getting to those bigger rocks or those pebbles, right? So just scrolling, you can make yourself a little bit frantic. I've been teaching, this will be my 28th year, and I can still get frantic and convince myself that I don't know what I'm doing
Mm-hmm.
just by scrolling and comparing my space, my teaching to the people on Instagram, the other music teachers on Facebook groups, or boy, Pinterest is just a landmine of visual stuff
Yeah.
that it's not for me right now. I got to parent my own brain, and
Mm-hmm.
I know myself, and I know that if I spend longer than say 10 minutes scrolling through back to school stuff, that I will start feeling like I don't know what I'm doing, and I'll have a little crisis. And I don't need that.
Yeah. Yeah, so if you're someone that has a really hard time maybe deleting some of those apps off your phone for the first couple weeks of school or back to school time, because if you find you're in your classroom and then you sit down to take a break and the first thing you do is pick up your phone, start scrolling, and an hour later you've done nothing, right? So maybe delete some of those apps from your phone temporarily, bring them back once you've gotten those big rocks taken care of if you have a hard time with that, or set, I think you can set time limits for certain apps on phones. I'm sure you can do that kind of stuff, right? I don't know.
Yeah,
Something
yeah,
like
you do. I
that.
do that. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
And you get to
100%.
the end and it says, you've done 15 minutes of Facebook. Uh,
Yeah,
do
bye
you
bye.
want more? And you go, no, I'm off.
Go
Right.
write your lesson plans now. That's what I need my phone to tell me.
Yeah.
Get
That's
off your
what you
phone
do.
and write your own plans. You're fine. You have your own ideas. So
It's
yeah,
okay.
trust
Yeah.
yourself. I mean, if you're newer to the profession, look for, and you need ideas, look for some of those longer running established things. Go to workshops on Saturdays, those kind of things. Social media is not going to be your best friend right now. It's
Keep
just not.
listening to our
Yeah,
podcast.
listen to
Um,
us. We've got some
yeah.
ideas.
We have
And
some
that's the
ideas.
beautiful thing. You can listen to us while you're doing your classroom, right? You don't have to stop and scroll. You can just listen.
This is true. Yeah.
So now it is time for a segment we call Know Better, Do Better. And this is based on the famous quote by Maya Angelou telling us that when we get new information and it helps us to reevaluate things we've done in the past, we do better and we do things differently. So this is where we're vulnerable and we share either new things we've learned or things we've done in the past that we're doing differently, just giving a little more information in case you're new to this podcast. So this is our Know Better, Do Better segment, and Tanya's going to share something she is thinking about right now.
Okay, I'm going to make this very short and sweet. I saw a movie a couple of weeks ago called American Fiction. It came out, I believe, in the spring of this year, or maybe a little bit before. Anyway, it is a movie about a Black author who considers himself an author, but not really that he's writing novels about the Black experience. Um, but he is kind of a struggling author and also a professor. And he notices that another Black author is getting a lot of attention because she wrote a very stereotypical Black experience book. And as a joke, he decides to write one as well. And to his horror, it's huge and he's getting a lot of accolades and he's using a pen name. But anyway, it's so worth seeing. It's humorous at times, but it also really made me think about how we frame things in our society. Um, and that's all I'm going to say. It's great. It's worth seeing. Me and my son and my husband, we thought we had a great time watching it, and I'm still thinking about a lot of those themes. And you should go see it.
Cool.
It's available, like I think Netflix or Prime or one of those things. Yes,
One of those streaming
one
thingies.
of those streaming things. Yes.
Okay.
And now it's time for our work smarter, not harder teacher tip. Carrie, bring us something brilliant that's going to save us so much time and effort.
Oh, it's not that kind of thing, but it's just a little thing that you could consider talking about with your students. And it has to do with your brain. So, I am a teacher leader in our district, a mentor teacher, and with that, we go to our own trainings and then we take ideas back to our groups. Anyways, one of the small things they shared with us was, thinking about your thinking brain, your prefrontal cortex versus your amygdala, which is like your flight, fight, freeze, response mode, right? And how students often flip the lid, literally. So they showed us a really fun visual, fun brain visual, where if you think about your brain like this, here's your amygdala, and your prefrontal cortex is like covering that amygdala, right? And this is when you're in a productive state, you're able to learn, you're regulated, you're able to go about your day. And when something triggers you, and there's a variety of things that could trigger people, right? And kids, we know that literally you flip your lid and now your amygdala is exposed. Now, this is not literally what's happening in your brain, but it's just a good little visual for kids,
I'm
right?
picturing a little alien, like,
Right, your
yeah,
alien brain. Or I think about those like lizards, like from Jurassic Park, that like,
yeah,
and then they've got those like Right, but that's another good fish. And I have heard people call it the lizard brain, I think, for this exact reason, too. So the whole idea is, we want to get to a state of regulation where we're able to learn and create and be productive. And when your brain is like this, you're not able to learn quite as well. Now, I haven't done this with students, but I thought, maybe even creating this as like a classroom signal, kind of one on one with some of my kiddos who do flip the lid, that when they feel like, if they are self aware enough, we know some kids, it happens so fast they're not even self aware, but some kids are enough that they feel like it's like slowly flipping, right? So I feel like if there's a kid and they need like a visual of, I need a break, so to speak, they could give me this like visual of like, I'm starting to flip my lid.
My lid is flipping.
I
Yeah.
can give them a thumbs up, and that's when they can either take a walk around the school or go to the calming corner or whatever, thing we've already got set up, whatever plan we have in place for them. But also just for all kids, just to kind of give them that visual of like, it's normal to flip your lid now and then. We all do, but we want to be in this state more than we want to be in that state. So, anyways, credit goes to um, Dr. Daniel Siegel for this hand motion and this explanation. I'll link to a YouTube video where he talks about it a little more, but I just think it's a nice little tool you might be able to use with your kiddos.
Awesome.
And now it's time for our CODA section where we recommend something we've been enjoying. This is going to be outside the classroom because we've been outside the classroom. So, out of all the things you've done, the adventures and the books and the watching and the experiencing, Tanya, what's one thing that you've enjoyed this summer?
It was only 2 months. I mean,
I know.
but I did, but I did read. I read a few books, which is great. And a book I read early on in the summer that I just loved. It was just wonderful, escapist, perfect for coming out of the school year because it was nothing about anybody who does anything with school. Is a novel called The Husbands by Holly Gramazio, and it's her first book. And the basic premise is this single woman who lives in the UK. She's at a bachelor party one night and she comes home kind of late. And when she gets up in the morning, there's this guy there who says he's her husband and acts, obviously knows her. And he, and this is not giving anything away because this is the basic premise of the book. Um, you know, uh, Later in that day, he goes up into the attic to like look for a light bulb, and a different guy comes downstairs, and it's a different husband. And so she discovers that anytime her current husband goes into the attic, a different husband comes down. And it's a lot of fun. It's not creepy at all. I mean, I know maybe I described that like, there's a man in your apartment and he's your husband. But no, it's like it's just so much fun. And, she explores lots of different husbands. And
Sure.
I thought it was hilarious and just a really fun read, but it also stuck with me because, there's not any huge life lessons, but it was some, things to think about and a good time. So the husbands, good time.
Yeah, I need to
And you?
add that one
Yeah.
to my list.
Yeah.
I'm also going to recommend my like first book of the summer, like needed to clear my brain. But you know me, it's a good old murder mystery. Or is it a murder mystery? Don't really know. It's a mystery. It's The Paris Apartment by Lucy Foley. I just had it and then I lost it. Yes, Lucy Foley, who also wrote The Guest List. So it's set in Paris, and this young girl goes to visit her brother. And when she gets there to his apartment, his Paris apartment, he's not there. And there's some really odd things that's making her think something wrong is afoot. And then, of course, it's one of these Agatha Christie type things where, you're in this apartment building and everyone's a suspect. And so she's trying to get to the bottom of where is her brother and what has happened and who is telling the truth and who is who they really are and who's not. And of course, everyone has some sort of a backstory. And yeah, it was a great, just fun murder mystery, nothing deep, but if you like that kind of thing, it was a really good read. I liked it a lot.
Cool.
We've reached the double bar line. Thank you for listening to Music Teacher Coffee Talk. Show notes can be found at musicteachercoffeetalkpodcast.com. You can connect with us on Facebook and Instagram. Just look for Music Teacher Coffee Talk.
If you enjoyed this show, please consider subscribing, rating, and leaving us a review on iTunes to help others find this podcast. And we always appreciate folks buying us a coffee. So look for that link on our show notes and on our Facebook page. Until next time, this is Tanya.
And this is Carrie wishing you happy musicking.